Scot Bertram sitting in for Steve here on the Steve Gruber Show on this Friday, all across the state of Michigan. Thank you so much for joining us. Mark Mix is with us now. He is the National Right to Work Foundation president and a frequent guest here on the Steve Gruber Show. Mark, thanks so much for joining us once again.
Scott, good to be with you this morning. Thanks for the opportunity.
Appreciate it. So the NLRB, the NLRB is involved in the case too, but the National Right to Work Foundation is specifically involved in this case involving a Michigan business. Tell us what's happening here, Mark.
Yeah, Scott, this is unfortunately a case that's all too commonplace across the country. We're helping employees at Rieth-Riley Construction Company who want to decertify their union. That means they have gotten together, signed a petition, got the requisite number of people to sign a petition that says, we would like to have a vote to remove the union from our workplace. Unfortunately, when workers try to exercise those rights that they have under the statute, the federal statute that allegedly promotes employee rights, they have been blocked by the National Labor Relations Board regional office in Detroit. The National Labor Relations Board is a 5-member board here in Washington, D.C. that is put together to, quote, enforce America's labor law. And they have 32 regional offices across the country that do the day-to-day business of the board. Well, this Region 7 board in Detroit has decided that they don't want these employees to vote. They don't want to give them a chance to vote because the union has alleged that the employer has done some things that are completely unrelated to the petition of these employees. But here is the rub. The region has blocked the election, saying they must adjudicate, solve these issues with the employer that have nothing to do with the employees before they'll let them vote. And obviously, while that process continues, these workers are still under the thumb of organized labor. They're in the clutches of their representation, and they can't get out. So we're trying to help these employees petition the full board back here in Washington to appeal that decision so that they can at least have a vote on whether or not they want to maintain the union in their workplace.
Mark, what do the rules say? I know we've probably talked about this before, but in terms of recertification, do the employees have to go in every now and then and say, yes, we want to keep this union? Or how does that normally work?
Yeah, not in the private sector, Scott. There is a movement in the public sector to have that type of recertification vote. Several states now have addressed it. A couple states have passed it where the union has to go in after a certain time period and say, yes, we still have a majority of the people in this unit that support our position. But in the private sector, that's not there. Interestingly enough, these type of blocking charges are not part of the statutory framework either. They're kind of created through precedents. I'm using my finger quotes here that are created on the fly sometimes by these boards. So, yeah, there's really no provision for them to go in and recertify. There is a provision that allows them to decertify, but this is what's happening here. And the union it's a real common practice. They immediately file blocking charges. As soon as they see a petition by employees saying we want out, they'll file a blocking charge against the employer for some type of behavior that they allege is wrong, and that stops the whole process until these, quote, unfair labor practice charges are litigated and finalized, and then at some point in the future, and we've had cases, Scott, that have lasted years where these blocking charges have been, litigated, and these employees have not been able to exercise their rights for literally years.
I was going to ask that. I mean, are there similar cases that you've seen that the National Right to Work Foundation has gotten involved in? How have those normally been adjudicated by the NLRB?
Yeah, interestingly enough, we have another one in Lansing, Michigan right now against the Amalgamated Transfer Union. An employee's trying to get a decertification vote, and obviously there is blocking charges filed by the union that have no causal connection to the issues at hand, but it's been blocked. We have dozens and dozens and dozens of these, Scott. And unfortunately, it's the employees that are having their rights denied because of this process. Now, interestingly enough, the National Labor Relations Board has just issued a new rule that's basically regulating this process. We were intimately involved in that, filed comments, and the board recognized, because of our expertise in helping employees through this process, recognized our comments, and they have changed the rules. Unfortunately, because of the COVID-19 issue, they have delayed the enforcement of the rule for another 2 months until July. So we're under the old rules, in this case in the Rieth-Riley case, and then the other one in Lansing. But there is good news on the horizon where the NLRB has recognized that if these charges have nothing to do with the employees or their actions to try to decertify the union, they ought to hold a secret ballot vote. And even if they just impound the votes or don't count them until the process is over, at least the vote has occurred and they've gotten their rights. We'd like to have the votes immediately counted and have the board process that. And if 100% of the employees say we want out, how is it that anything that would be extraneous to it should block that? It shouldn't. That's the point.
Mark Mix with us, President, National Right to Work Foundation, NRTW.org on Twitter, @Right to Work. We've got just maybe 60 seconds left here, Mark. Tell us about the workforce a little bit at this Michigan location. How many are they, and what's the general feeling you get about the way the vote would go?
Yeah, this Rieth-Riley Construction Company is a big road contractor. In fact, they have several contracts across Michigan. The union called a strike back in July of 2019. Several of the employees have crossed the picket line. They're still working. They're trying to do their job and helping to improve the infrastructure in Michigan. But this strike is ongoing, and the union is trying to hold on by their fingertips. So in order to trigger this process, you have to have at least 30% of the entire bargaining unit sign a petition. And obviously, they've got more people than that to sign a petition. But again, this process imposed by the regional director up in Region 7, which is the Michigan director, it says, we're not going to let you vote. We're just not going to let you vote. We're not going to exercise your rights. It happens more than it should, and hopefully this new rule change will correct it and allow workers the right to exercise whether or not they want to be a union and have a union represent them. That's the real solution, Scott. Let them vote.
Mark Mix, President, National Right to Work Foundation, NRTW.org, and on Twitter, @Right to Work. Mark, thanks so much for joining us here on the Steve Gruber Show.
My pleasure, Scott. Thank you.
Thank you.